see here, I have the call to action to run indexing. If I do that, what this will do, we're going to talk about it in depth, but this will actually run a full build of all of the data that I have in the system, at the moment nothing, and do what we talked about. So looking at that, I mentioned our seamless builds. So if I have already a domain running, and it's got a couple of partitions, user queries are coming in, we have some load balancing, DNS, security at the front, and queries are then going to each of the partitions, and this is my running domain. I now say build. So in parallel, we'll create a new index, in this case partition 3 ways, and that will exist, come up, be running, and we will flip over so that the queries are now routed to the new leaf. So I went through that kind of quickly because we went through it already one time, but that's visually how it looks. And then we take down, of course, the old fleet. So we can look quickly at uploading documents.
Can I ask a couple other feature questions now? Maybe you'll get to them later, but
sure.
Do you handle things like spell checking or autocomplete or related searches?
So
and then what kind of back-end statistics do you get? It's like, if I'm running my domain, can I go and, what I get for, what are the popular queries or the trending queries, or how are things changing?
Right.
You'll probably get to that later, I'm assuming.
So some of those features, most of those features are not yet exposed. So I would say, we will have those kinds of features. I think out of the gate, we were interested in providing something that was seamless, easy to use, and got you started quickly. We're going to definitely be coming out with a richer feature set as we go forward. So as of now, we don't have autocomplete, spell check. I think you mentioned
related search.
Related search, right.
I have a question on this.
Yes.
Say I have a bunch of files and there's some security on them that certain users can see them.
Yes.
And then I added a new user. Now the new user is able to see all those files. Does it mean that I will have to send all the documents to search?
It depends.
With the new user?
So the question is, if I have access control built into my documents based on something, and a new user comes in, that user now has access to a certain set of documents, do I have to re-upload everything? And it kind of depends on how you implement the security. So if you have some notion of groups, and that user then belongs to a group, and the queries include the group, then you wouldn't have to update the document. If the security on the document is user-based, so that each document carries which user, then yes, you would have to upload all of the documents that are changed with respect to that user.
This group concept you can provide to the Amazon search?
Yeah, so in building your search document, you could include a group field on that document that would allow you to filter your searches. Right? Let me run this quickly. So, this is, again, command line access, and I just want to make sure, yes, I think I have to do this. That's better.
So I have one more question. So you said that the search engine it scales automatically. So does it scale based on the amount of time it takes to run your searches, or whether your searches are slowing down?
It scales based on CPU load, which in some ways is a proxy for, but of course, building a generic search engine, we don't have access to sort of a standard query. There's no standard query or a yardstick that we could use to say your queries are running slowly, because how quickly your queries run depend entirely on your queries. Well, not entirely, but largely on your queries. And where 1 second may be a completely acceptable normal latency for one user, it may be out of the range for what's acceptable for a different user. So we can't really scale based on actual latency of queries. What we scale on, again, is the load on the server, and when that reaches a certain point, then we're able to add more.
Can the user select, like, I want this query to run within half a second, and it'll scale, it'll pick the right infrastructure based on that?
Not currently, no, but I like that sort of way of thinking about it, that you could say, okay, here's a representative query, here's a target latency, make me that big. Of course, the caveat is, again, you can easily write a query that will never run that quickly. So, yes, we could do something like that, for instance. Yep.
Does NI support partial update? Like, if I don't want to, if I just want to update the metadata of the document rather than doing the bulk upload of the document kind of again?
Not currently. So again, the question is, do we support partial updates? So can I send a single field and say, update it on this document? So at the moment, we support only sending the full document, and that would be the update.
So another question on that. When you do an update with the batches, I guess you always send a batch, right?
You always send a batch. Can
And
have
the
one
batch can
document.
have one document or more.
Right.
Do you get a manifest back saying what was acknowledged? I'm not saying it's a transactional resource manager, but at least I'm looking for audit trail.
Watch.
Okay.
We're gonna do that one right now. So what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna look at this. This is an SDF search document again from the million song data set. Okay, and I've just, you can see it's actually quite a bit bigger than that, and I've blown a bunch of it up so you can see it. And it's just a set of the documents, right? And so what I will do here is we have again a command line tool called post SDF. What this does is it actually looks up the endpoint for your domain and takes a file name, source and that's that SDF. Okay, so I do that. No. What happened? No, it's falling off the end of the screen.
You get space in there.
Isn't it named SDF.json?
No, I auto-completed it. Should
Is there
work.
space in your path, desktop, million songs?
Maybe it floated, yeah. No, but it's got the yeah,
Feel like a
wait,
million
is there
songs.
space in between source and tilde?
Everybody perfect. After a million?
Well, it should be because I auto-completed it. Yay, demoitis. Okay. Let's try. Million song SDFs, 0.
SDF 0.
SDF 0, thank you. And then it should be .json. Good. Okay. So you'll see on the client side, it actually is looking and figuring out.
You're at the wrong endpoint, wrong IP address. Is your email?
Yeah.
Well, I thought I set that up for access to everybody, but I may not have actually set that up for access. Anyway, what you would be seeing here is actually something that says status, success, added, in this case, I think a few thousand, deleted, 0.
Does
So-
it tell you the items they actually added, is what I'm wondering.
It does not, well, if it fails to parse it, it will send back an error. Apart from that, it's going to add everything, or delete everything.
So if it didn't fail, then it succeeded in batch.
Right,
And, okay.
right.
If it failed, would it be a partial upload or no upload?
If it failed, it would be no upload. So the batch survives or fails as a batch.
I mean, it sounds like a good way of thinking about it. I'm not really completely positive that would work that way, because you might have, unfortunately, a failure when actually putting the index. So it parses, it's valid, you try to submit it, you submit quite a few. It's not gonna roll back if it failed. So you just, there's a notion of like a read behind, you know? Did it actually write it or not? And did it get changed or not?
Right, so your status would be either a success or fail. If there's success, the documents are written.
Right, and you're committing to that, yeah, that's a, Okay,
Yeah, I mean, if you send an update, we'll do the update.
right,
You will be committed to that.
okay.
So apologies again that that didn't go, but there's not much fireworks. Again, it just shows you the status. Um, Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our integration with our application. And really, what we did for the demo is extremely simple and not meant to be web scale or anything like that. So all we did was we created a little Apache and PHP script, basically, and it's talking to Cloud Search, as we'll see. Users are pinging it directly. Nothing to write home about. And again, you saw that. We did a little bit of a demo of it. So I just wanted to quick point out the integration point. Within the PHP code, we do a simple file get contents, which opens a URL and reads the document out of it. And you can see here, this is an example of the search interface. There's our endpoint. Then this is the path to the resource. Q equals is a simple all-text search. And we use the keyword. And we also construct some other stuff for faceting and all that. We'll look at that. We add return fields. And then we do some facet control. We say, okay, facet on, the year facet and the genre. So do the facet for those. And we can pick a sort criterion. So we can sort our year facet alphabetically. We also have the possibility of sorting by highest number of results or by the min or max of another function, basically min or max of values. So in other words, sorting by the max would be pick the facet on the top who has a document with the highest value across all the facets for this particular field. Oops, wrong button. We can control how many facets we want to see, so we can control, show me 5 facet values for year, or in this case 10,000, we want to see them all. And then we can actually apply thresholds. So in this case, we say discard any document with a year earlier than 1985 and a title. I don't actually know what that one does. So that's A dot dot A and up. And then a rank criterion. That's really it. And what comes back is, again, by default JSON, but you can actually retrieve XML out of it as well. I should also say your source documents can be in either JSON or XML.
Does it support the in an open source format? The open source standard for result spec and query?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. Presumably. So it is our API, so
Yeah.
I would think so, but I don't actually know the open source spec.
So a rank criterion is the expression we created earlier,
Yes.
unit expression.
Okay, so let's do this. We can see that kind of in action. Let's pop over to here. And actually, I'm so sorry. This seems to be such a standard speaker's layout. So with me doing this. Okay. So what I have over here is a little tool for Firefox. All it does is it parses up the URL and presents you with a little form that allows you to put in parameters. So all I'm doing here, there's no magic. I'm just creating URLs with different stuff in it. So like in particular, we can do Q equals Rolling Stones. And again, Q is our search all of the text fields in my document across everything. And if I do that, I will see, again, some IDs, which are fairly inscrutable because I don't have any return fields. So I can say return fields, title, not genre. Yeah, I think genre is it? Yeah, not genre. You can retrieve title, year. Artist name. Okay. So we can get a sense of, we can pull stuff out of there, and here again we see Rolling Stones. This is the initial result set. If we want, we can also add facets. So we can say facet on year. And if we do that, what we'll see is I should probably go over a little bit the structure of the response. You'll see what we have. We provide back the match expression is how we parse the query, and then the number of hits found. This is for pagination, so you can set a start and a size. We have the ID always returned for every result. Again, here's our results with their return fields, and in this case we get 10 of them by default. Below that we have facets, and what you'll see here is our facet, we provide a min and a max. So actually, how do we see that as years, right? Because you don't want to see just a min and a max. So what you can put here is facet year constraints, and you can say, let's go 1999, 2000, 2000, and then 2001 to 2005, like that. And that enables us, then we'll get, bottom, we'll retrieve buckets for our integer facets within that range. We also can facet on alphabetic. And I can't remember what I called it in the base. So here we'll see we have counts for all the genres. And by default, it's by count. We can also do it again alphabetically. We have different ways of retrieving the facets. We can also control, again, how many, and we can control, how many. So moving on to a little bit more of a complex query, we could say, okay, well, title is, oh, that's actually not moved on yet. Let's do, while we're at it, let's just do rank. And we called our rank what? So for the Million Songs domain, relfam is its name. Okay, so I can here add rank, relfam, and what we'll see is, again, we will then be using our rank expression to rank those. We wanted to see if we could actually return that, so let's look at, where is it, return fields are here. So let's look at text relevance, and let's also look at relevant. So here we can see computed scores for those different fields. So you're able to do some debugging and looking at what are the values that I'm getting back. In fact, we could, I believe, also retrieve artist familiarity. If I spelled it right. Yeah, so here we get a sense of, okay, here's our source value that we're using, and it got mixed in with text relevance, and here are the values that we got for that. We can also specify multiple rank expressions, so we could do text relevance here as well. And what that would do is it would use text relevance as a tiebreaker in this case, so you can string together and tier your results based on what they're matching. Just looking quickly at some fielded search, so we can actually use BQ as our search that is fielded and provides a Boolean language-based query interface that allows you to do things like, I can say BQ and Rolling Stones. So what that would do is search Rolling Stones against everything, and then I can say year 1999 to, I don't know, 2001. So this searches for Rolling Stones titles between 2000 and 2001. And we should see, hopefully, we didn't retrieve the year, but well, I'm not seeing Rolling Stones in here, probably because it's buried in the Rolling Stone. Yeah, Rolling Stone, Rolling Stone, Rolling Stone. So probably what we actually meant here is artist name, Rolling Stones, and year 1999, and then that should bring what we want. So again, on the back end, this is how you would run facets and fielded searching to do more complex queries.
How do you sort the descending? The descending order?
Yeah, by default, descending, and if you want, you can actually stick in a negative sign to sort it the other way.
Okay.
I think it's default descending. So if I do that, it flips.
So if I want to add a new facet, or change the field type to, say, return back results, does it need a complete repeat of all the documents?
Yeah, anytime you change configuration, you would rebuild your full document set. So, looking at that, we can go to our console, close up this big thing, and look at our indexing options, and we could say, okay, well, let's say my artist copy, actually I want that to be a literal field, and I want it to be searchable and facetable, and I can submit that change. Okay. I think that one already said needs index. So this will update my configuration in the configuration service, but it's not actually live yet on my fleet. So in order to get it live on my fleet, you'll see that signified here by this needs indexing. So if I ran indexing, which I don't see why I shouldn't, I can run a build, and it moves into a processing state. After it completes, usually, like I said, can be like an hour. Depends on the data set, data size, et cetera. Happens all in the background. That field will then become live in my search domain, and I can use it.
So you do actually store a text version of all the fields and things.
Yeah. Okay. So
I had a question.
Yes, go ahead. So I would just open up for QA now.
Well, I had a question about what do you get for logs and usage statistics?
So logging, at the moment, we don't expose anything. We think logging should be really on a client side.
Right.
It's easier for you guys. Well, it's easy because you're sending the queries. So
Right.
Right.
And how about usage statistics? And you do some sort of billing. So.
We do billing, so we could talk a little bit about the pricing.
Uh-huh.
I swear I had a slide on pricing.
I mean, you would definitely want logging, right? You want the option of turning on logging because it's true that you should be able to do it on your side, but then what if you can't what if you're not good at what you do? Which is what most people do.
That's why people are using this, right?
That's why they're doing this.
Because you could have used Lucene if you wanted to do it all yourself.
Yeah. House,
Yeah.
So if you get it, if you have logs, and then that would mean if you're running some sort of elastic compute, you hit a button and you pull all your logs over automatically to your elastic compute, you can party on.
Right, right.
That'd be sweet.
So yes, absolutely. Ultimately what you want is some facility that would allow you to look at usage and understand how your users are using it.
Right.
Typically like analytics, so you'd want to know what are my top searches, what are the top searches that got 0 results, what are et cetera, et cetera. So that's the kind of thing I think as we expand out, we'll be looking at bringing features like that out.
Right.
Not necessarily raw logs. Again, that would be more on the client side if there was deep logging, especially for user behavior things. That's all on the client side. The client should know the user clicked on result 5 for this query. They should do, adjustment in source documents to sort of match that. Let me see if I have. I thought I had a slide on pricing. Let me see if I have it. Nope. Okay. Well, that answered that question. Well, I can speak about pricing. Where are we here? Let me just get back to where we were. So for pricing, we have fundamentally 3 pricing parameters. We have the dominating thing would be the hourly cost for the instances. So if you look at, again, in the dashboard, you see how many search instances are running to serve your domain. And we have, at the moment, 3 different instance sizes. We have a small instance, a large instance, and an extra large instance. Those run 12 cents an hour, 48 cents an hour, 68 cents an hour. As I said, you can get started with a small search instance for less than $100 a month that would host, given some certain configurations, we tested it out to be about 1 million documents. Depends very much on configuration. There isn't any inherent limit on how much querying you can do. As you run more queries, of course, if we scale, you would be paying for the additional hosts that we brought in. But fundamentally, you can get started for $100 a month or less.
What defines a large subsystem? Like how much cost would it be?
It depends. So the large instance is 48 cents an hour, which, if I'm remembering right, works out to be something like $300 a month. And then the extra large instance is 68 cents an hour, works out to be about $500 a month.
Unlimited indexing and unlimited querying? Is that
So, getting to that. So unlimited querying minus modulo the fact that if we scale, you would pay for the additional query volume that you're sending. Our additional pricing components are, we charge 10 cents per 1,000 batches. So that's approximately 50 gigabyte if we max them out. And we charge 98 cents per gigabyte of source documents to run run an indexing. So, as I said, your cost would be dominated, generally speaking, by the running instances. You can, tack on a little bit more for uploading batches and a little bit more for running indices, but probably in the long term not going to be a big cost.
Is there an option to scale down? Suppose in a given certain period of time, in a period of the year, there might be, you might need 100 servers rather than 10 servers. But once I reach that limit, for next 3-4 months, I might not need 100
Right.
servers. So how do you guys repartition? Do you automatically do that?
Yes.
repartition?
So the nice thing about Cloud Search, again, going back, I just have to go back to the shopping.com example, because if you look at 20 years of person effort versus $100 to get started, and you look at, we racked several thousand servers to support our use case, and we had to rack several thousand because in the peak time we needed several thousand, but we didn't need that all year round. But there was no way to get rid of those servers when we didn't need them. Opposed to Cloud Search, it's very nice because when you're not using that capacity, you're not paying for it. It goes away. You scale it down. So, ultimately you pay for what you use, and the cost saving can be very large because of that.
We do support batch deletes, right? Like, let's say I want to delete all data older than 3 months.
So that comes up quite frequently too. We don't currently support batch deletes. You can't send a query and say delete everything that matches this query. At the moment, you have to do the round trip yourself. You have to run the query and then send the batch of deletes. Yeah.
How's your availability?
Is it 99.9?
We don't have any. We're pretty new, so we don't have any statistics that we released. But you
100% so far.
So generally speaking, like AWS availability is well known to be into the multiple nines, and certainly for storage, it's into the, I can't remember, 9 or 11 nines of availability. Cloud Search again is currently in one region, and currently only a single copy per region. But ultimately, as with all other AWS services, we'd like to bring out some kind of multi-zone where you could just push a button and have replication between data centers. It really would be sort of that simple, where you could, in your configuration, say, make this a multi-zone domain, and in the background, we would handle everything about deploying to 2 data centers, balancing the updates, balancing traffic, doing everything that's required to put it in 2 data centers. Again, looking at the enormous time and effort back when I was working on search engines, it's pretty amazing to me to be able to just click a button and now, boom, you have two copies in different data centers, high availability, durability, all that stuff. So, and just on the topic of durability also, one thing we didn't really cover is the same facility that allows us to scale allows us to be very durable in the sort of face of failure. If hosts go out, we're able then to bring new hosts up. It's not instantaneous, and again, you'd want to have multiple data centers, et cetera, but within 5 minutes or so, your search domain would be back up, even if you were on a single instance. Obviously, if you were scaled deeper, you would have more durability than that.
So can you choose where your data gets hosted? Let's say I'm in Germany and I want my servers close to me.
So AWS has the concept of a region, and fundamentally a region is a collection of data centers. So we have regions, US East, again Virginia. We have a couple of US West regions, a couple of Asia Pacific regions. There's an EU region. I don't know the full list, but yes, at the moment Cloud Search is only in one region. Obviously, as an AWS service, we're going to roll out across the globe, and then you would be able to pick which region you deployed your search engine in.
I have two questions. My second one, sorry. Forgot to mention I have two questions.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. I didn't read your privacy agreement, user agreement. So
Okay.
in a nutshell, describe what that is.
I also have not read our privacy agreements, so I'm going to have a hard time summarizing that for you. I don't think there's actually an OILA. Probably when you sign up for AWS, you do have a end user license agreement. I am not a lawyer and don't know what that looks like, to be honest.
Can Amazon look at the data?
There's a page that says AWS privacy notice.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know.
You give away some rights in AWS.
Yeah. Yes, I'm not sure what the line is in terms of what we can look at or not look at. Obviously, we have the data. I think there's a pretty strict control on who has access to data. So, not sure what to say other than that, and it's probably in the licensing agreement.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be any different than your hosting provider, right? I mean, where if you are a startup, you are hosting somewhere, and they can probably look at all your data.
Yeah, they probably could.
You can look at it but don't get it.
So I have one more question. So do you cache queries, and do you have like do all the queries run and hit the database or whatever?
So do we cache queries? Well, all of the index is in RAM. So there isn't any native caching that we do, since we don't do any swapping or anything else that would cause it to come out of RAM. So there's not a big benefit for us for doing caching. Having said that, it's reasonable to deploy caching on a client side where you're looking at heavy queries or something like that and being able to cache those and not run them.
How do you handle deletes? Can you explain how it happens behind the scenes? Do you just get deleted from the index and there, or do you periodically run declassification process where invalidated documents or previous version of
So how do we handle garbage collection in the index? I'm teetering on I don't know. I think there is sort of, I'm not really sure how to answer that question. Yes, we handle garbage collection. I don't know the sort of deep level answer to that. At some point, we will remove deleted documents from the index. They do remain in the index for a while as a tombstone with no fields on them to match. And then at some point they are swept.
Okay. So, and one last question. Just curious, have you guys done any benchmark comparison with a Lucid, Lucene installation with BayAreaSearch?
Funny enough, we've been so bent on getting, have we done any comparison with Lucene Solar? We've been so bent on getting it out the door that we didn't do a lot of like benchmarking, but that's going to come. I mean, we have to make our way in the marketplace and prove ourselves worthy. And
Because with the companies, anyone can set up a Lucene-based cloud.
Sure.
Company with you.
Sure. I mean, I would say that in a comparison, where we're going to win is really on the operational side of things and the ease of use. So if I'm running a startup and I don't want to become a search expert, and I want a turnkey solution that I can send documents to, and I don't have to worry about sharding myself, I don't have to worry about partitioning, build fleets, I don't have to worry about uptime, I don't have to worry about anything, that's who we're going to appeal to. And in some ways, yes, latency is going to be important, but the operational kind of picture is really, I think, where we have big appeal.
How do you guys calculate text relevancy?
So it's a combination of TF-IDF and proximity of terms.
Freshness?
Sorry, how do we calculate relevancy?
Do you use freshness as well? Freshness and
We don't ourselves use freshness. That would be a good candidate for rank expression.
Question, is it possible to support multiple types of documents? So if you have, in the example you showed, the songs, if you had artists also, and you wanted to query artists, lyric songs with the
Sure.
artist of this property.
So the question is it possible to host multiple different document types? We have songs. Could we also host, say, artists or other types of document? Yes, you can absolutely do that as a sort of search application. You would add a field with a document type, and then in a BQ, Boolean query, you could actually use that to filter to select one or the other type. Or you could ignore it and return everything.
Along the same lines, you could decide, do you make multiple domains that you manage, having different each collection having different well-defined types, or do you try to combine them in one? Because you're
Yes.
sharing, it looks like you're sharing a common schema here.
Yes. So the question is really, when does it make sense to do single domain versus multiple domain? And the trade-offs really have to do with, there's some relevance effect, because again, you're doing TF-IDF, so your count, for anybody who doesn't know TF-IDF, I apologize. So the count of terms is going to be affected by those two different flavors of document. I don't think that there's one that's a clear winner over the other one. I think a lot of it depends on scaling characteristics, traffic characteristics. Are you having a lot of traffic for one type and then putting another type in there is going to make that, make that traffic mixed in, so it would be better served from a separate domain. It's really a matter of taste.
Right.
Mostly it's not the relevancy. It's going to change a little bit, but not much.
can I have two different domains and federate search between two domains?
Yes, but you'd have to build the federation. So we don't have federation out of the box.
How does cloud search integrate with your other AWS services like S3, SimpleDB?
Excellent question. So how does Cloud Search integrate with our other AWS services? So at the moment we don't have native integration. It's kind of an obvious point. If I have an S3 bucket, I'd love to have a button that says search my bucket.
Right.
And all it does, and it takes care of updating, and as I send updates to the bucket, it updates, and obviously RDS and DynamoDB and SimpleDB, all of these are great candidates. And as we bring out new features, keep an eye out for that kind of thing, because it's an obvious path for us to go.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you familiar with Elasticsearch?
A little bit. By name, I haven't gone deep with them, so.
Yeah, so I think they have a lot of kind of similar features, allowing you like distributed search. In fact, they have EC2 like a plugin sort of, so you can actually deploy like a distributed sharded search. A lot of features are similar, except for the fact that you guys have much nicer ease of operation.
Right. So, and again, I would say there's a track record that AWS has in terms of running services, in terms of uptime we talked about, in terms of all that. I mean, I don't want to cop out, but I do think that there's some cred that AWS gets for being a large, already running cloud service.
Yeah, so you could actually deploy Elasticsearch actually on AWS.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, yeah,
Well, that's true.
you get the benefit. I think the main benefit I have with Elasticsearch is you get a schemaless model. You can do anything you want in schema. But there's nothing free, and when you get that, you're going to lose some performance. You're going to lose some flexibility. It's just that's how it works. But probably it would be better to start with this and then decide, do you need that schemaless approach? Before you need it, you might find that hopefully soon you'll have more options for providing extensible schemas you can upload, but you don't actually care to search on, to fasten on or whatever, but they're returned. So it'd be great if you had an extensible schema a little bit more, but my bet is you take you 6 months before you're ready for that. Hopefully you'll be there in 6 months.
Right. So one thing I would say we have developed that I didn't go over is we do have a tool that looks at an SDF and generates a configuration.
Oh, sweet.
So it's somewhat
great.
heuristicated.
How do we get that tool? That's not on the site that I saw.
It's part of all of the command line tools for file search. So I can, if I can find my mouse, I can pop over here and I can do CS configure from SDF, and I can say source. Let's see if I can do it right. Install SDF 0 JSON. And oh yeah, I need a domain name. So dash p and it'll read my SDF and it'll propose a configuration. And in this case, all of these fields are already configured, so it knows that and says, okay, well, these already exist. You can actually force it to send the configuration.
Right.
And also it'll pick up any new fields if you send new documents through it. And it proposes a configuration, as I said, based on some heuristics, but it's a starting point. It does make it very easy, again, to get started.
Right.
You just kind of send a bunch of SDF through it and it says, okay, here's a configuration.
Very cool.
All right. Let's just quickly, since we're running to about 8:30. So I want to mention some upcoming events that we have. We're having a meetup in San Francisco on October 3rd, as well as we're going to go to DC for the Enterprise Search Summit. There'll be another meetup in Palo Alto on the 24th of October, and November 27th, 29th, AWS is having a big conference in Las Vegas. We'll be there. It's called reInvent. I also have gift cards for AWS. So if you come and leave your name and email address, there's a $25 gift card. Hopefully to use Cloud Search, but we have those available. And again, as I mentioned, we have the resources slide. Here, I will be getting my slides to Brian, and I assume we'll get them posted, so you'll be able to find that stuff. We have FAQs, we have a forum, documentation getting started, some tutorials, some papers to read about how to do cloud search applications. So I think we already did Q&A, but are there any other questions?
You share most of the search engine is shared with Amazon A9. Where's A9 development? Is it mostly here in the Bay
A9
Area?
development is in Palo Alto, yes.
Right.
So we're here in Palo Alto.
Are you considering an enterprise search solution, not in the cloud, just for enterprise search competing with, say, SharePoint search or Endeca?
So how do you mean? I don't understand the question.
Like a hosted, like standalone product.
Standalone product.
Something to run within their data center.
Yeah,
I see. So it only runs within AWS.
I know. So are you considering it in the future?
Are we considering the future? Sorry, I didn't get the end of the question. So are we considering having a standalone solution that you just plop into your own data center? I would say that kind of goes against the spirit, because I think what we're really, again, trying to offer is very turnkey, very hosted and out of the box. You get search quick. And on that note, I will. Thank you very much.